Good. We have a quorum. Why don't we get started? Good evening, everyone. This is the Finance Committee meeting of October 17th, 2022. We are being recorded for those of you that are joining the call. In attendance, we have Michael Bennett and Cheryl Zarella Burke, Todd Dargy, and John Smalling. So we have the entire committee. First, on acceptance of the minutes, I need to beg your forbearance on the last two meetings. I am asking Caesar to send me over the transcripts so that I make sure I didn't miss anything in doing this, because my minute-taking skills, absent having a secretary, is just killing us. So I'm going to get the transcripts and go through them once more, and at our next meeting, we will have 2 or 3 sets of minutes that we'll need to approve. So I'll just beg your forbearance on that. Sandy, first, reserve fund transfers.
We have none.
We're good there. Okay. Great. Then I'm really pleased that we're going to be able to do a couple of talent bank interviews this evening. So first up is Frank Johnson. Frank, thanks very much for joining us. And for being willing to volunteer to help the community. I think what usually helps, well, first, with respect to process, we want to just learn a little bit more about you. This isn't an interview. This is just kind of get to know a little bit more about you. Then we would recommend to the Board of Selectmen that you would be added to the Finance Committee. So we'll ask you some questions, make sure you understand the commitment that we'd be asking for, and then it's really brief. So maybe just start. We have your talent bank form, but maybe just start kind of just give us a little bit about your background and your interest in the Finance Committee.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm retired. I retired October 2021 after 44 years of working. I moved to Halifax, bought a place here in 2014. And continued working in Colorado, commuting back and forth to Colorado and Massachusetts until 2021. Spent the last 31 years working for a very large natural disaster company, managing their environmental division out of Colorado. Responsible for the profit and loss, client development, management of day-to-day operations of the division, as well as recruiting, interviewing, and hiring employees. Managed project budgets, estimating profit and loss to the client, and client interaction. That's pretty much my business background for the last 31 years.
Got it. Thank you. Questions of us. What are you curious about? And then I'll open up the committee to just kind of ask you a few questions.
Just a kind of a little bit better understanding of the Finance Committee in general, other than just just managing the budget of the town, or yeah. How does that go?
Yeah, in a sense, I would say that our town manager and the Board of Selectmen manage the budget, but we sort of represent the citizens of the community, and we set ourselves up as liaisons on on each of the department heads' budgets, and we work with them to make sure that we can come in with as realistic a budget as we possibly can, try to understand their issues. This evening, actually, what we'll do is for next year, for the next budget cycle, we'll all decide which departments we want to liaise with, and then from there, it's a process of going over the budget over and over, understanding the challenges for school, police, fire, and the smaller departments, water. Those being the big 4 chunks of the budget, and then lots of smaller budgets inside. I think the group always has we vote independently, so it's all of the votes ultimately come down to one evening where we have our town meeting and where we have to present a point of view on every line item in the budget. We're unanimous. If we're divided, we present it as straightforwardly as we possibly can. And then usually we get asked a few hard questions at that, or more than a few hard questions at that town meeting about why. And then we go from there and we start over again. Board members, maybe just weigh in, committee members, on, is there anything that I missed about kind of what the experience was like?
No, it sounds about right, John.
Okay.
I think you're pretty accurate as to what the experience is about. I guess one of the things to know is that, and they, I found this out at my interview when I interviewed over a year ago with the committee, was that January to May is a very, very busy period for us. Yeah. Extremely busy as we're prepping for town meeting and getting ready to go. And they always say it's very busy, but you don't realize how busy until it actually gets there, and it does consume quite a bit of time.
Right, that's true.
And there's a lot of prep work to do in that time frame. So that's just one thing to be cognizant of, I guess, if you're interested in the committee.
It's a great.
So your budgets are starting up now, then?
Yeah.
They submit them in December, late December, early January.
Is that their first draft of them, or how does that go?
No, that's basically that's their budget, and usually we as committee members have certain departments that we meet with, and we'll sit down and meet with them, and they'll, whatever they haven't explained on the budget, they'll explain to us, and we are not on anybody's side. We just listen.
I see.
But we are asked to make a recommendation at the town meeting. So while we're listening, there's a lot of respectful dissent around certain pieces and a lot of concurrence and support for other pieces. I'd say that our town has a challenge, and the other towns around us are they've got a different sort of tax base. They've got better industrial mix. So we have challenges because of where we sit geographically. We don't have a quick way to get to 44 the way, Plimpton is much smaller than we are, but because they've got 44 running through it, they've got some really good industry sitting there that helps with their tax base. We don't have those kinds of things. So I would say they are submitting what they hope is their final budget in December, but it's through a lot of moral suasion and talking to people that we try and get them to be more realistic about it if we need to, or that we reallocate funds where we are. We rely supremely on our town accountant, who is currently our acting town administrator, who's on the call. She's our both teacher and guide, and figuring out making sure that we're realistic and that we understand what decisions we have to make. And I would echo Mike's view in that from January to May, it's a weekly meeting, usually of an hour. Usually we try to keep it to an hour, but then it's probably an equal or more amount of time poring over budgets and making sure we understand every line item and the rationale for what it is they need to do. Usually there are a few things that spike us. Last year it was special education transportation, for example, that was just a huge challenge. But it's important for each of us to kind of know what's in the budgets that we're responsible for getting through.
Understood. So what happens after budget season? What's the finance committee do for the remainder of the fiscal year?
So we take August off, kind of. August or July, one of those. And then we go back to it. It's really July, because in August we get back to it. We may meet only once a month, then twice a month, and then build up the cadence for that. So like tonight, well, the other things that we need to do. So Cheryl has to sign off on payroll. And if there are any reserve fund transfers, any inter-accounting changes, we have to approve those. So it's what we start with usually. Often there might be correspondence, there may be legal matters that need cross-funding or something like that, where we've got to move money around in the budget. So all of those general ledger moves of funds we've got to approve. So it's usually what we start with, and that's why we keep a regular cadence so that those things don't build up, and we're able to kind of keep things moving forward.
Okay, I understand.
We're also responsible for wage and personnel jointly with the Board of Selectmen. We used to have a separate wage and personnel committee. It's now being done jointly by us and they. And there are a lot of challenges. We're losing some really good people right now due to budget constraints and the competition for good staff. So it's an ongoing problem for us that we've not yet sorted out.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It was a difficult battle for me when I was working as well, in negotiations with different labor groups, crafts. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there.
Todd, John, anything else that you'd want to ask Frank?
I guess, just in general, Frank, anything in particular that is motivating you to, be on the committee?
Like I say, I'm retired. I've spent the last year just decompressing from 60 to 70-hour work weeks for the last 40-something years. And so I'm ready to get back out there. No intent on going back to work. So I thought I'd try some volunteer work around town, kind of see what's going on. I've started attending some of the different board meetings and stuff to kind of get a feel the last few months of what's going on. And so I thought maybe I'd give it a shot here, kind of see if this is a good entry level for me to spend some time with. I'm going to be spending a little bit of time with the search of the town administrator. I was selected for a slot on that as one of the citizens at large.
Good.
So I've got some time. I've got quite a bit of time. Now we're coming into winter. I'll have a little bit more time now. But just looking forward to understanding the town and spending a little time working with it.
Awesome. Well, we hope to have you on. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
The one constraint, Frank, that we should point out, because of the fiduciary responsibility we have, we can't sit on any other boards or committees. So it's just a conflict of interest issue. So just so that you're aware, because I know you had checked a few off. So if you join the finance committee, it's kind of a blocker on being on other committees because of the financial decisions that we have to make, the recommendations we have to make.
Yeah, I understand. And I kind of figured that might be of an issue. And is that including working on the town administrator position? Because I know we only have 2 meetings set up for that.
No, that's not a constraint. But
Okay.
Any other town government agencies or committees, you wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
Well, thank you. As I said, we hope that you join us, and I echo John's sentiments about having you. We need 2 more people on the board for us to have full complement. So it's great that you've asked. We need to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, which we will do right after this meeting, and then you'll hear from us in a day or 2.
Yeah, and if I do get selected, my time will be committed to my responsibilities with your finance committee. I understand wholeheartedly how important it is to be committed to what you asked to do.
Great, that's great to hear. Thank you.
I can sit by and listen through the rest of this meeting, or do I have to get out?
Nope, you don't have to get out. There won't be any vote about you or anything. As I said, we're going to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and then go from there.
All right, very well. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. James, thanks for joining. You got both the benefit of that conversation, and so I think a lot of what we'd like to cover with you is basically the same thing. So maybe just fill us in, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Unlike Frank, I am not retired. I am still working. I am, wish I had that luxury, but that's coming. I'm the director of programs for a company called Smartronix based out of Herndon, Virginia. We do a number of federal level DoD programs, work with the FBI. I do the project management on the cloud computing side. So I work with the AWS aspect of the business. My wife and I moved to Halifax probably about a year and a half ago. We came up from the New York, New Jersey area. My interest in the committee is I just want to help. I want to get, as I get older and wiser, as they say, I want to help the town get better. And whatever it is I can do to make that happen is what my take is on that. I've worked as the director of programs. I've managed P&Ls up to $147 million. I've managed organizations up to 145 not direct reports, but a staff of 145 people. And I've managed businesses. I've helped write businesses that I've done work with write grants to get money for their cloud services, which is actually I think plays well from the aspect of revenue coming into the town. How can we get grants? What can we write? What's the problem we're addressing? That kind of framework. I'm certainly happy to kind of lend a hand with that. I've just, as I said, I just want to help, and I thought this was a great way to do it. I'm not a front guy. I'm not the guy who wants to run to be on the selectmen. I'd rather, work in the background, make sure that the elevators are running and the buses come on time. And I think this is a great way to do it, because this is really where the town, starts functioning.
Agreed. I can't guarantee you won't have a few darts thrown at you at the annual town meeting, but by and large, we work in the background, and this crew has been sort of very diligent about just being unbiased arbiters and trying to understand the financial challenges that the town has and how we can make the most of what we have in improving the town. I'll open it up to the committee. Guys, questions?
Just a quick question, I guess, Jim, have you served in or volunteered, I guess, in past organizations or?
Well, I mean, yeah. So years ago, from like a town administration perspective, no, I have not. Years ago, I was a volunteer firefighter in my local in the local town that I was in down in Maryland. Of course, that was 30 years ago, and I was a much younger man and much stronger, I think. So I did that, was in the police department in Aberdeen, Maryland for 6 years, and then got into computers way back when, and that's what's kind of brought me up to here at this point.
Sure. And then any concerns with the time commitments that they would have?
No, this call at 6 o'clock on Monday evenings fits right into my calendar very nicely.
Okay, good. John, Mike, anything? Or Cheryl?
No, I'm good. I think other than what we talked about before, and he was here for that, I think
Yes,
we're
that
okay.
was educational. It was highly educational.
Right. Yeah, you got the briefing independent, which is good. Now, I think both you and Frank, I mean, we love your background. We think you'd be great adds to the committee, and I'd like to just basically say the same thing we said to Frank. We have 2 slots open. We want to fill them. The entire town right now feels like it's running very thin. We're down to 1 board, 1 selectman. Sandy's wearing 2 hats. There's a lot of that right now that I think if we can just start to beef up the number of people that are actually working for the community, I think we're all going to be better off. So thanks for coming in, and we'll talk to you soon.
No, absolutely. I look forward to it, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to the team.
Sure. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks. You're welcome. And Jim, you're also welcome to stay on. Up to you.
Oh, excellent. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. It gets pretty boring from this point forward, I suspect. That's all right. We'll do it. So, committee, any other comments before we move to the next agenda item?
Are we on hold in any way? Maybe Sandy knows as far as appointing committee members to,
Oh,
I mean, the election
question.
pretty close.
Right. So because you guys have a quorum now and can function without additional members, Jonathan will probably hold off until there is a full board to appoint anyone.
Okay,
But that's just, November 8th is the election. I think that they'll hit the road running after that. I think they'll probably make the appointments shortly after that.
Yep. Figures.
what I would propose then, if the committee agrees, maybe the thing to do is, well, we won't have another meeting till after the election,
Right.
right?
Right.
So-
Right.
so-
Well,
No, don't. We have one at the end of the month.
we meet the first and the third Monday of every month.
Oh,
until we
sorry,
start
we
our
will,
week-
right, first Monday, sorry.
So
first Monday.
November 1st, right?
Okay, so we will have one more meeting before the election, and
Maybe.
then election on the 8th, and then we'll, so I don't think that would slow us down at all, slow us down by one meeting from getting the
Yeah.
appointment.
Hmm.
So, right? Okay, good point. Thank you, John, for bringing that up. I forgot that we sort of constrained on making appointments. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Thanks, John. Okay. Next up, Finance Committee liaison appointments for the next fiscal year. So if, I probably should have sent this out earlier, but I think I can run through everyone's now and remind you of what you had last year. And I think before that, how about if we go around, if we just go around and have everyone sort of give an expression. Is there a particular department that we each want to work on? Part of what I want to do is make sure that we're able to change it up if we can, so that people get a different taste of working with different department heads and that over the course of the next budget cycle. So maybe, is there anyone that wants to change from what they had last year? I want to start with our vice chair and start with Cheryl first and see what her view is.
No, I like my departments. I
Okay,
have police, fire, COA, and buildings.
right. Okay, Todd, how are you feeling about, what you had last year? Is there an area of interest that you want to kind of add to your bailiwick?
I mean, not particularly, no. I mean, I'm happy to keep the same assignments I had last year. It was obviously my first time going through it, so I think going a second time would be, beneficial.
Okay, and you, yeah, well, gosh, you guys may make this meeting small. John, how are you feeling about yours?
Yeah, I was kind of along the same lines as Todd. I think it would be, a benefit for me and the boards just to stay with it for a second year. I appreciate your, thought on switching it up too, but I'm fine either way, honestly. But if that's the preference of the board, we could keep it the same.
I mean, I feel like you're right. It was like my first year, right? I wanted to do the same thing the second year because I felt like I may have finally figured it out.
Yeah.
So I can see that with you guys too. It's a learning curve the first year. You get to
Yeah,
get
definitely.
and go from there. Michael?
Yeah, I'm good with what I have. I'm good.
Okay.
I guess the only thing though, Tom, is right, we split last year, 5 ways, right? So if we have 6, maybe we need to do a little bit of shuffling, but
Yeah, so I think maybe what we do is we do initial assignments. So for example, even in that, we had it actually 6 ways because we had Mike O'Brien, who wasn't with us
Yeah.
very long.
Oh,
and
yeah,
we
right.
juggle, remember? So we had to juggle his assignments. So I think you're right. Probably what we should do is do initial assignments now, and then when Frank and Jim join, we can reassign to them, but make sure that we have a complete coverage model tonight. So maybe if I can just read in for the record where we would stand then, and I'll just do them as they were on the liaison appointments from last year. Todd, you would have the accountant's office, the assessor's office, the Board of Health, the building inspector, the collector treasurer, the selectman, data processing, and the town clerk.
That's right.
And I realized too, where you may be helpful there is on some of those, we have new staff in the department head seat. So you'll be able to, it'll be their first time through, even though it's your second. John, you'd have the appeals board, conservation, the planning board, Halifax and Lights, holidays in Halifax, the housing authority, weights and measures, youth and rec. That would be it. Then Cheryl, you would have COA, well, you've rattled them off, but COA, the building committee, civil defense, police, fire, and the dog officer.
Yeah, COA, police, fire, dog officer, and yeah, building.
Building
Steve.
and civil defense, which I think, civil defense fell to fire. So
Yeah. Dog goes to police.
dog goes to police. So yeah, you really have, those are collapsed, but they have separate budgets for you to keep an eye on. Michael, you would have the cemetery, highway, recycling, and water, which is the biggest,
Right.
the big budget of all, I think. And then what we would have open, because these were Mike O'Brien's assignments, were Veteran Services, the Historic Committee, Historic District, the Library, and Parks. So maybe we hold those open for when we have new appointees, and then we'll compose a slate for the two new appointees. And then I would have Halifax Elementary, Silver Lake Regional. That was it. I had the schools last year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I'm very happy to keep that, and in fact want to get more involved with doing the school's budget this year. So if everyone is comfortable with those, I'll reissue this, and we'll update the department head names and all of that, and I'll reissue it before the next meeting so that we've got an agreement here, and then not at the next meeting, but the meeting after, we can do some minor revisions around the open departments and any others that we could do to rejuggle it and actually lighten your loads. Because, I mean, I look at Todd, for example, even though they're small departments, 1, 2, 3,
He's got a lot,
5,
yeah.
6, 7, 8 different budgets to absorb is a bit of a challenge. So, and John Smalling is not much better with 2, 4, 6. He has 8 as well. So we can sort of peel some of that work off, because each budget's got a sort of a minimum commitment and understanding what they need to be done. Okay. Any other comments on the department liaison?
No.
Okay, so our assignments are set for next year, with the exception of doing a bit of rejuggling when we get 2 new members, hopefully in a few weeks. So the only other discussion that I wanted to have, and it may not be one that's productive at all. I think that our last meeting, I want to compare our last meeting and a meeting a couple of weeks prior, where I wanted to sort of get the committee's input on what matters should come to us. And I think they should be, by and large, actionable matters, things that actually have there's a way out, there's a way forward, there's some solution that we can come up with. And I take two matters that we covered in the last couple of meetings that had very different outcomes. But I think it speaks to the kind of the constraints that we're under right now, perhaps with the committee and all of that. And even Sandy, if you could even weigh in here. We had a few weeks ago, we had to do a regrading on the water superintendent. We have a new water superintendent. We did a regrading on that job. We approved it. It wasn't terribly controversial. We talked it through. I think we had a good discussion about it, and we wound up making we had a positive outcome in that instance. But at our last meeting, we had a similar conversation about hiring a new social worker for the COA. And we had a very different outcome, right? I think a lot of the arguments were similar. The market price on a social worker is is up from what we had graded the job on, but we were sort of in a box. There was no way for us to help with what needed to happen on that role. And I found that disappointing personally, because we just authorized what, $1.4 million for a new COA building.
Mhm.
And I liken it to when I was in graduate school at NYU, and we built a beautiful new library for $10 million, but we forgot that we needed to buy books to put in it. So we didn't have any books. And I it would be just, we wouldn't be serving the town very well if we build this beautiful new edifice for serving the aging community in the town, and then not have anyone that can actually staff it and serve the community. So, Sandy, I guess what I'm trying to understand is when should things come to the committee and when shouldn't they? And Sandy, maybe you could weigh in a little bit on the thought process that you had in bringing both of those to the committee over the last, in one, we had a very positive, well, we had an outcome that was the outcome that was requested by the manager who brought it to us. And the other, we really couldn't do anything. I mean, have you got a point of view on that, Sandy?
Right. So what happened with the water superintendent was not a regrading. What we did is we jumped him a step so that he could be paid higher.
Okay.
And it was unusual because it wasn't, usually the department head will ask to bring someone in at a higher step, but this was like he's already worked here for a year. So usually we don't do it at that point. So that was a different situation, and you did decide to do it. We had heard through one of the selectmen that it was okayed by our attorney. I still haven't seen that in writing, but it happened. What the Council on Aging director was trying to do last meeting was not the same thing. She was actually trying to increase the grade. And I think, so the outreach coordinators that we've had in the past, we've never had an actual social worker who was an outreach coordinator. That was never one of the requirements. We've had other people who were good at the job, but Darlene feels there's definitely a need for a social worker, but it's a different position. It's not the same position that we had filled in the past. So because of that, it should be going back to be regraded, bring it up a grade, but then it has to, because it's a new position, it has to go to town meeting.
Sure.
I did try to explain that to her. I thought she was going to come in and ask to bring the girl, the new hire in at like a step 3 or 4, or even 6. But what she was trying to do was actually regrade the position.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Procedurally, we just couldn't do that.
Right. Right.
If we get to full committee and we get to full board and we get a new town administrator and Sandy, with all of those things happening, it is my hope that maybe next year, what we had wanted to do last year was a complete regrading. And I think there was some sort of unspoken resistance to actually doing that because we don't really like what the answer is going to be. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least know where we stand. And at least we know objectively where we stand. And so I'm hoping that this year, I know that Todd wants to work on this. I would like to work on it, but we can get to a place where we actually figure out what our competitive position is and what our, what our grading system, which hasn't been, we have not updated it in a few years. And we've had, 2 years now, 1% increases
Yes.
for our non-union staff in an environment where we know that that's fundamentally not competitive. And we can keep doing that, but we're just going to keep losing good people. So I think we got to figure out that balance. So hopefully we can get that on the agenda once we get all of those staffing issues of our own squared away, ours and the boards and the town manager. And anybody else want to weigh in? I felt like we left that hanging the last time, and I want to make sure that we were kind of really, I needed to understand the difference between the two. And thank you, Sandy, for explaining the what was it, which is a pretty radical difference between those two decision sets that we
Right.
took.
Thanks for asking for the explanation, Tom, because that was helpful. But I think just the topic in whole is something that we're just going to be dealing with all year because, as you said, we're in a position where, we want to pay these people that have worked so hard for the town, equal to, what people in neighboring towns are making and what they deserve. But what are we paying them with? I think
Right.
so we're just in such a dilemma there. So without, really going back to the beginning and having increased revenue and regrading, it's going to, make for some tough decisions, I think, during the year. Because, of course, you want to say, yes, this person deserves a raise, but, we can't just keep doing it, without precedent. And you can't just keep on, giving people raises if there's no money to give them raises with, just to put it simply. So it's a really tough position that I know we're all, struggling with, and we're trying to look at each case by case, but I think it's good to look at it as a whole. So appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, no, and I agree with you, John. We can't spend more money than we have. And so I think the question that I see is that we can be mediocre and not competitive and non-competitive sort of across the board, or we can figure out what we're not going to do. Like, what is it that we won't have in the budget so that we can pay everyone else competitively, or at least get closer to it. And I think those are much harder choices than, what we're doing right now. We're sort of having that choice made for us by having good people leave, and maybe we should be figuring out where do we have to move the money from, so that we can, support the things that we actually can support.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, that
Tom,
necessarily have to go up. It has to come from somewhere. Yeah, sure. Ed.
Tom,
No, Keith.
hold on. Okay, can I pipe in for a quick second? If I'm not sure if I'm out of order, just let me know. So, I think what the committee, the main task of the committee, other than the budget stuff for this upcoming year, is going to be to do this regrading stuff. Because if we continue to push it along, kick the can down the road, so to speak, we're doing a total disservice to all our employees. And I totally agree with what you say. I don't think, people in Halifax, or the employees of Halifax, are looking at getting paid with the same as an employee, let's say in Marshfield, because that's not, even reasonable. But I think we have to seriously go back, regrade the positions, because what's happened is a lot of positions have added responsibilities, whether it be, to a legal precedent or other things. People are working, doing 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and, getting paid what people are doing, flipping burgers at McDonald's. And like you said, we're just going to keep losing people. And it's going to affect the services in town. And it's an unfortunate, obviously outcome because of the lack of revenue source that Halifax finds itself in. But we have to be, creative, like Todd had mentioned, last year, think outside the box, come up with some other ideas. But I think it's a disservice to the employees if we don't really hammer it down and get this, thing done at least this year.
Yeah. No, Chief, I agree. I mean, I think if we all we're trying to get with a regrading process is to understand where we are. And then I think, as John points out, we may have some really hard decisions. Either we find new revenue sources, or we're going to have to decide what we don't do so that we can pay people competitively on those things that we find to be truly essential and the things that we want the town to have. I also think, part of the committee's and hopefully, when we have a full board and we have we have other committee members, we have to think creatively. I mean, I think we had some really good suggestions last year about ways to deal with the special ed transportation problem. And no one was willing to take those alternative views into account or think about ways that we could do things more efficiently. So I think it's going to be incumbent on us to just press to the extent we can on those things, because I think there are ways that we can do things the way a pragmatic small town needs to do that that we actually are not doing, and as a result, we're not able to pay people well because we haven't used the resources well enough. I don't know what you guys think, John, Todd. I think we've got some of those opportunities too. Okay, so we know that's going to be before us for next year. Any other comments on this one this evening, guys? Okay. Sandy, any correspondence?
No, we had no correspondence.
Okay. Chief, thanks for weighing in. Any other, or from Chief as well, any other public participation? Any comments from other attendees tonight?
Jean's
Okay.
got her hand up.
Oh, Jean, sorry, didn't see it. Thank you, Cheryl. Jean, what's up?
Hi, no worries. I actually just put my hand up. I was listening to that whole great discussion about the wages and stuff. And so I had a friend that was doing a wage study for West Bridgewater that she shared with me. And West Bridgewater used to be in our 10 towns.
Yeah.
But when she did her study over at West Bridgewater for the West Bridgewater Library, she didn't use those 10 towns. And I'm wondering where those 10 towns actually came from. I know we've probably been using those forever. And if we would ever think of comparing our rates to Pembroke or Kingston or what, the Bridgewaters, and I'm, specifically thinking, as far as libraries go, but I don't know if anybody had any thoughts about anything else on, maybe adjusting those 10 towns, or can we do that, or where that came from, or?
It's not cut in stone. I mean, and the committee or Sandy weigh in, but I mean, because I know it predates all of us coming, but there were towns that were matched on the basis of demographics and industrial base and
Right.
kind of what did the tax base look that was comparable. And that's where even having Plimpton in it, with Cisco and Hubble Lighting as their two biggest taxpayers, kind of, even though they're smaller, they have a better, more robust tax base than we do. But we include them in the 10 towns, I think.
Right.
West
So the
Bridgewater-
10 towns, Charlie would go through Plymouth and Bristol County. We got him to stick to Plymouth and Bristol County. And it was towns that had similar populations, similar budgets. So that's what he was using. There may have been one or two other qualifications, but he actually would go through it each year. It didn't change a lot, but he would go through each year and see if there were other towns that we should be comparing ourselves to.
Cheryl?
And when he was doing that, did he compare the citizenship as far as how many seniors live in the towns?
I don't think he looked at age groups. I think
That's
that those demographics, it was mainly like population, budget, medium home income, that type of thing.
So they didn't separate the population as
No.
to how many senior citizens you had living in the particular towns.
No, he didn't do that.
No.
I'm not sure that's a demographic that he would find.
Yeah, you
sorry.
can find it on the census. You can get the demographics off the census.
Yes.
So those are there. The thing that is interesting though is the town actually has gotten younger and richer since.
Mhm.
But still almost half of us are senior citizens here.
Yeah, I added to the folks equation, end of the equation, but
And just out of curiosity too, I guess, historically, did we make any changes based off of those past
small ones,
houses?
one in, one out, but there wasn't a big one.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that we wanted to do, Gene, that I think is another sort of counterpoint is we ran separately and we still got the data. It's dated, so I would want to run it again. But we also ran a sort of full Massachusetts set for, what do all the towns in Massachusetts pay to these positions. We took individual positions and benchmarked them and ran them through a public, well, it's a proprietary database called PayScale that I have access to at work. And so we ran a bunch of positions through that. So we did have, these are the 10 towns in a micro sense, and then we tried to run a macro, here's what all of Massachusetts would be on those roles. And then we were able to take that and do what's called a regression to our population size so that we got all of the ones that were in there. I think if we do a full-blown one this year, we should take both perspectives, because we're really just trying to see objectively where do we stand, and then it's a separate decision about what that means for raises and services and all that.
But not so much just like population. You think like, well, in the library world, if somebody's applying to the Halifax library, they're probably going to apply to the Kingston library as well. And, I'm not, advocating either way, but I'm just saying, so Kingston is paying, and I know why they're paying so much more, but if somebody's interested in working in this area, do we match ourselves to area, or, and make that be a factor too?
Well,
I don't know.
I think this is, to John's point, the reality of affordability, that, a great librarian who in any of those three towns might want to work at the BPL. The BPL can pay way more than or we can. So we have to compete in the context of what we, kind of what we're able to spend. So having those aspirational numbers, like knowing that Kingston and Marshfield and Pembroke or Duxbury can, because of their more affluent tax base and their broader industrial tax base, they've just got more spend on those services than we do. So I think finding and
I actually sort of kind of maybe agree with that as well. It just was interesting to hear a different perspective there, and to be like, oh yeah, people are applying to the towns that are surrounding. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
no, that's helpful.
Something else for us to
Right.
think about in the pile of stuff.
Thank you,
And
Chief.
Chief has his hand raised. Yep.
Hey, Chief.
Yep, thank you. So just to clarify one point, Tom, Plimpton is not a comparable because of the population, and what Sandy was mentioning is correct. So Charlie would do is he would go through the MIAA database and centralize Plymouth and Bristol towns, and for example, like 1 year Dayton, Rehoboth was in it. Next year it wasn't it, but for the most part it was the same 10 towns. Now, so like what you said about the population being younger in Halifax, yeah, I mean, if you just a quick Google search, the average median resident age is 42.8. So we're a young community. So I think there definitely is, so resources out there for us to utilize to get really comparable towns. Because obviously, like for example, Carver is one of the comparables in our 10 towns. We don't compare to Carver at all. Not only in population, and also in manufacturing and commercial base. West Bridgewater is another one of the, and we don't, you look at West Bridgewater salaries compared to our employees, it's a joke. So we need to, if we're going to compare ourselves, it should be comparable.
Right.
And that's what we need to do.
I agree. Yeah.
The difficulty is finding comparable towns within the Plymouth and Bristol counties.
I agree.
And we have asked him to we had asked Charlie to stick to Plymouth and Bristol because of the fact that that's who we're competing against.
Right.
It's people in those counties that are going to come and apply for the job. And we have to be as competitive as possible, which we're not, to the towns in this area. So it's always been difficult. There was 1 year we couldn't get 10 towns. We had 9 towns in Halifax because we couldn't even get 10 towns that were within reason.
Right.
So
So, yeah, we have.
But I am glad to hear that you're talking about looking at the whole picture, because the
Nope.
difficult part is some department heads are more vocal and they will stand up and ask for more money for their employee. And other department heads are less vocal, and even though their employee may deserve more, they don't get as much. They're not as willing to get in front of people and ask for more. So,
That was one of the reasons I brought up the thing that we talked about earlier. Because if we have a more structured approach to this, then the squeaky wheels aren't, we have to do a much more
Right.
balanced look at kind of all of our departments and figure out if there are places that we have to cut so that we can be competitive somewhere else. That might be what we're up against. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then moving on then, in the category of as may arise, I just had one thing that crossed our desk. Actually just came, yeah, it was a letter on the 12th. Did anyone see the letter about the virtual meeting tomorrow from 5:30 to 7? I know that Todd and who else had volunteered for the union negotiation?
Me,
Cheryl. Okay. So did you get this letter from Paula Hatch?
I did not.
Okay. So there is a joint meeting of Union 31 and Silver Lake School Committees tomorrow night, virtually from 5:30 to 8, to discuss preschool structure issue and possible update on the regional agreement. It will be held virtually. Why don't I just forward this to both of you? And if you can make it, I would have loved to make this, and I've already got a commitment for tomorrow night.
You say I have one too tomorrow.
Have you? Todd, do you
I
think you
do.
can go?
Yeah, I'm free tomorrow. If you want to shoot it over to me, I can join.
All right, I'll send this over. It's a Google meeting at 5:30. And it's about restructuring of it's one of the issues in the contract that they're going through. And so they were kind enough to forward this over. So I'll make sure you have all the data so that you can join. I'll send it before I leave the office.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I had in as may arise. Is there anything else? I think that is the first meeting ever where we didn't have a vote. Not one vote.
I know.
That's right. We're still really productive. So the only vote I'll ask for this evening is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Roll call vote. Michael,
Yes.
Cheryl,
yes.
Todd,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and myself as a yes. So we will adjourn at 6:55. Thanks everyone for great conversation. And next meeting, first Monday of November, at 6, and it'll be by
It will be November 7th,
all right, yep.
is that the first Monday? Then yes,
first
Yeah.
Monday.
whatever that first Monday is, that's November 7th.
Yep.
Okay. All right, all. We'll see you on the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night. Feel better, Mike.
Thank you.
Tom, Sandy, or Tom, you said there's
yeah.
a Zoom meeting, right?
Yes, please, Caesar. It was
Yes.
very helpful to have it tonight. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it's on my calendar.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Caesar,
Yep. Yes.
it's Cheryl. I am having an issue getting on my laptop. I don't know why.
Okay. Are you free tomorrow? You can give me a call and I can walk you through and help you out.
I can give you a call in the morning.
All right. That's fine. Just give me a call then.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Night. Okay, good.